Have you ever felt your secrets become your worst nightmare? Sofia and Leandro's forbidden affair awakens something terrifying on a foggy highway. A ghostly woman with burning red eyes who knows their darkest sins. Stay until the end, because Sofia's punishment isn't death, it's eternal torment. The moonlight barely pierced the thick fog that clung to the deserted highway, casting an eerie glow over Leandro and Sofia's car, parked haphazardly on the shoulder. Their breaths were heavy, tangled in the heat of a forbidden moment. Their lips locked in a reckless dance of desire. Leandro's wedding ring glinted faintly on the dashboard, a silent accusation ignored in the haze of their passion. Sofia's fingers traced his jaw, her heart pounding, not just from the thrill of their secret, but from something else, something colder, creeping into the edges of her awareness. The air outside felt wrong, heavy, like it was watching them. Did you ever feel a chill that wasn't just the wind, a prickling on your neck that made you question if you were truly alone? The car's interior, once a cocoon of stolen intimacy, seemed to shrink as the fog thickened, pressing against the windows like a living thing. Leandro pulled back, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror, catching nothing but darkness. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice tight. Sofia frowned, straining to listen. At first, there was only silence. The footnote, the stillness, was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the car's engine cooling down. Then a sound, a low, mournful wail, like a child's cry carried on the wind. It wasn't loud, but it sliced through the night, sharp enough to make Sofia's stomach twist. "It's just the wind," she said, more to herself than to him. But her hands trembled as she clutched his arm. Have you ever heard something that made your blood run cold? Something you couldn't explain but knew wasn't right? They tried to laugh it off, chalking it up to nerves, to the thrill of their illicit rendezvous. But the air grew colder, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. Leandro reached for the keys, ready to leave, when the radio crackled to life on its own. Static hissed, then cleared into a soft, haunting melody, a children's lullaby, sung in voices too pure, too sorrowful for the dead of night. The words were indistinct, but the tone carried a weight of loss, of longing. Sofia's breath caught as she fumbled to turn it off, but the knob wouldn't budge. The song grew louder, the voices sharper, almost accusing. "What the hell is this?" Leandro snapped, smacking the radio. It went silent, but the quiet that followed was worse, deeper, heavier, like the world was holding its breath. Can you imagine a sound that feels like it's pulling secrets from your soul? Secrets you didn't even know you carried? Outside, the fog seemed to pulse, swirling in shapes that looked almost human, almost familiar. Sofia squinted, her heart hammering as she tried to make sense of it. A figure stood just beyond the car, barely visible through the mist. A woman. Her white dress tattered and flowing, her hair wild and dark, her eyes glowing a sickly red. They weren't just eyes, they burned with a rage that felt ancient, personal. Leandro cursed under his breath, gripping the steering wheel. "You see that, right?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sofia nodded, unable to speak, her gaze locked on the figure. The woman didn't move, didn't blink, but her smile, sharp, cruel, knowing, cut deeper than any scream. Have you ever seen something that made you feel like your sins were laid bare? Like every wrong you've ever done was staring back at you? Leandro turned the key, the engine roaring to life, but the car lurched forward only a few feet before stuttering to a stop. The headlights flickered, then died, plunging them into near darkness. The woman was closer now, her skeletal fingers trailing through the fog, her smile widening. Sofia's scream caught in her throat as she grabbed Leandro's arm. "Drive! Drive!" she pleaded, but the car wouldn't move. The dashboard lights blinked erratically, spelling out words in broken flashes. "You can't run." The air inside. The car grew stifling, thick with the scent of damp earth and something sweeter, like rotting flowers. The woman's presence wasn't just outside anymore, it was everywhere, seeping into their thoughts, their fears. What would you do if the thing chasing you wasn't just after your life, but your guilt, your shame, your darkest truths? They stumbled out of the car, desperation overriding sense. the gravel crunching under their feet as they ran into the fog. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions, the trees lining it looming like silent witnesses. But something was wrong, horribly wrong. The trees weren't just standing there. They seemed to lean closer, their branches curling like fingers, their shadows twisting into shapes that weren't quite natural. Sophia's breath came in ragged gasps as she glanced back. The woman was gone, but the fog carried her laughter now, low and mocking, echoing from every direction. "This isn't real," Leandro muttered, more to himself than to her, but his eyes were wild, his hands shaking. It's just a story, right? The woman in white, some old ghost tale," but the words felt hollow, swallowed. "By the night, have you ever tried to convince yourself the impossible wasn't happening, even as it closed in around you?" The road seemed to shift under their feet, bending in ways that defied logic. They'd run straight, but somehow they were back at their car, its doors now wide open, the interior dark and waiting. The radio hummed again, the same lullaby, but now the voices were clearer, singing names. Leandro, Sophia, woven into the melody like a curse. Sophia's legs buckled, her mind reeling. She saw flashes in the fog, 3 small figures, children, their faces pale and tear-streaked, reaching for a mother who wasn't there. The images weren't just visions, they felt like memories, heavy, with grief, with betrayal. Leandro grabbed her arm, pulling her upright, but his face was pale, his eyes haunted. "What do you see?" he demanded, his voice cracking. She couldn't answer, couldn't explain the weight of those children's eyes, the way they seemed to know her, to blame her. Can you imagine being forced to feel someone else's pain, someone else's loss, as if it were your own? They climbed back into the car, slamming the doors, locking them as if that could keep her out. But the woman in white didn't need doors. The rearview mirror flickered, and there she was, sitting in the back seat, her red eyes boring into them, her smile, a promise of something worse than death. Sophia screamed, twisting to look, but the seat was empty, yet the mirror showed her still there, closer now, her bony fingers brushing the back of Leandro's neck. He flinched, swatting at nothing, his breathing ragged. "What does she want?" he yelled, but the question hung unanswered. The car's engine roared to life on its own, the wheels spinning as the vehicle surged forward faster than it should, the road blurring beneath them. But the scenery didn't change. The same twisted trees, the same endless fog, the same highway looping back on itself. What would it feel like to realize escape wasn't just impossible, but that the thing chasing you was rewriting reality itself? Sophia's mind frayed at the edges, doubt creeping in. Was the woman even real, or was this their guilt, their lies tearing them apart? Leandro's betrayal of his wife, her own willingness to ignore the wreckage their affair would cause, had it summoned. This? The woman's voice whispered now, not from the radio, but inside their heads, soft and venomous. "You abandoned them. You abandon everyone." The words weren't just accusations, they came with visions. Sophia saw herself in the mirror, her face morphing into the woman's, her own eyes glowing red, her own smile cruel. Leandro clutched his head, muttering, No, it's not true." But his voice lacked conviction. The woman's power wasn't just fear, it was truth, raw and unrelenting, peeling back every lie they'd told themselves. Have you ever faced a truth so ugly it felt like it could break you, like it could rewrite who you thought you were? The car swerved as Leandro fought the wheel, but the road seemed to fight back, curving impossibly, narrowing until the trees scraped the sides. The woman's laughter filled the air, no longer distant, but close, intimate, like she was breathing. Down their necks, Sophia's heart pounded as she caught glimpses of the children again, standing in the road ahead, their small hands raised, their eyes pleading. She screamed for Leandro to stop, but he didn't, or couldn't. The car barreled toward them, and in that split second, she saw their faces clearly. Not just children, but hers, Leandro's, reflections of what could have been, what they'd thrown away. the impact never came. The children vanished and the car spun, skidding to a stop in the same spot they'd started, the fog thicker now, the silence deafening. Can you fathom a moment where your choices come crashing back, not as regrets, but as ghosts demanding? Answers? They sat there panting, the weight of the night pressing down. Leandro's hands shook as he tried the ignition again, but the car was dead, the dashboard dark. The mirror flickered once more, showing the woman's face, not behind them. Now, but between them, her eyes locked on Sophia's. "You can't leave," she whispered, her voice a blade. "Not until you understand." Understand what? The pain of abandonment, the cost of betrayal. The visions came faster now, relentless. Leandro's wife sobbing alone, Sophia's own family turning away in shame, the woman's children crying for a mother who'd never return. Each image was a wound, each one deeper, until Sophia wasn't sure whose pain she was feeling anymore. Leandro's voice broke through, hoarse and desperate. "We can fix this, right? We can get out?" But his eyes betrayed him, darting to the shadows, searching for a figure he knew was there. What would you do if the only way out was to face the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime hiding? The fog pulsed again, and the woman appeared outside, her form sharper now, her dress stained with what looked like blood, her children at her side, their small hands clutching hers. They didn't move, didn't speak, but their presence was a demand, a judgment. The car's locks clicked open on their own, the doors creaking as they swung wide. Sophia's breath hitched, her body frozen, but Leandro bolted, sprinting into the fog, his footsteps fading fast. She called after him, her voice swallowed by the night, but he was gone. Or was he? The woman's smile widened, and Sophia's heart sank. Was Leandro running from her, or had the woman taken him, twisting the road to trap him in his own mind? The children's eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw herself in them, lost, abandoned, searching for something she'd never find. Can you imagine being left alone with a choice? Stay and face the truth, or run and lose yourself forever. Sophia's hand hovered over the door, her pulse roaring in her ears. The woman stepped closer, her red eyes unblinking, her voice a whisper that curled inside Sophia's thoughts. "You're not done," she said, and the words carried a promise of pain, of revelation, of something far worse than death. The road stretched on, endless and twisting, the trees leaning in, the fog alive with shapes that weren't quite human. Somewhere in the distance, Leandro's scream echoed, sharp and fleeting, but Sophia couldn't tell if it was real or another trick. The woman's children began to sing again, their lullaby soft but relentless, pulling at the edges of her sanity. She could run, could fight, could beg, but the woman was everywhere, in the fog, in the mirrors, in her own reflection. What happens when the monster isn't just outside, but inside, waiting for you to admit what you've done? The night stretched on, the highway a maze with no exit, the woman's presence a weight that grew heavier with every step. Sophia's mind raced, grasping for answers, for hope, but each thought twisted back to the same question: what did the woman want? Forgiveness, revenge, or something deeper, something that would unravel everything Sophia thought she knew about herself? The fog tightened around her, the children's song growing louder, their voices weaving her name into the melody. She took a step, then another, the gravel crunching under her feet, but the road seemed to shift again, leading her back to the car, to the mirror, to the woman's unrelenting gaze. The truth was out there, somewhere in the fog, but finding it meant facing a darkness that might never let her go. Can you feel it? The pull of a story that doesn't end, a nightmare that keeps you running, searching, questioning, long after. The lights come on? Sophia's breath hung in the air, a faint cloud swallowed by the fog that seemed to breathe with her, its tendrils curling tighter around the car. The open doors creaked, swaying as if nudged by invisible hands, and the woman in white stood just beyond, her red eyes blazing through the mist, unblinking, unrelenting. The children at her side, three small shadows with hollow faces, clutched her tattered dress, their voices weaving that haunting lullaby, each note sharper now, like needles pricking Sophia's skin. The song wasn't just sound, it carried Wait, a grief so raw it pressed against her chest, making every inhale a struggle. Leandro's scream still echoed in her mind, distant yet piercing, but the fog warped it, stretching it into something less human, more like a wail of something trapped. Had he run, or had the road taken him? Could you feel the dread of a choice you didn't make, a moment where the world decided for you and all you could do was follow? She gripped the car's doorframe, her knuckles white, her heart slamming against her ribs. The woman didn't move, but her presence grew heavier, like gravity itself was bending toward her. Sophia's eyes darted to the rearview mirror and her stomach lurched. The reflection wasn't hers, not entirely. Her face was there, but her eyes glowed faintly red, her lips twitching into a smile she didn't feel. The image flickered and, for a split second, she saw the woman's face overlaid on her own, those skeletal fingers brushing her cheek. Sophia jerked back, her scream caught in her throat, raw and silent. The mirror went dark, but the sensation lingered, cold, intimate, like something had crawled inside her skin and stayed. Have you ever looked at yourself and wondered if what stared back was still you, or something else entirely? The fog pulsed, thicker now, alive with shapes that flickered at the edge of her vision, hands reaching, faces forming, then dissolving before she could focus. The trees along the highway groaned, their branches twisting into claws, scraping the car's roof with a slow, deliberate screech. Sophia's pulse roared as she stumbled out, her feet sinking into gravel that felt too soft, too yielding, like it might swallow her whole. The woman's children stepped forward, their small feet silent, their eyes locked on hers. They weren't just sad anymore, they were angry, their gazes accusing, as if Sophia had stolen something from them. The lullaby shifted, the words clearer now. You left us, you'll never go home. The melody wrapped around her thoughts, pulling at memories she didn't want. Her mother's disappointed sigh, her brother's unanswered calls, the life she'd traded for Leandro's promises. What would it feel like to have your past weaponized, every regret turned into a blade that cuts deeper with every step? She ran, her shoes slapping against the road, but the highway seemed to fight her, stretching longer, curving where it shouldn't. The fog clung to her skin, damp and cold, carrying whispers that weren't just the woman's voice, but others, Leandro's, her own, even strangers, all blaming, all pleading. Why did you do it? Why did you stay? The words weren't loud, but they burrowed into her mind, each one a splinter she couldn't pull out. She glanced back, expecting the car, but it was gone, replaced by a void of mist that pulsed with red light like a heartbeat. The woman was closer now, gliding without moving, her dress trailing like smoke, her children trailing behind, their hands outstretched. Their fingers weren't just reaching, they were beckoning, promising something worse than pain, understanding. Can you imagine a terror that doesn't just chase you but invites you, daring you to see what it sees? Sophia's legs burned, her breath ragged, but stopping wasn't an option. The road twisted again, and suddenly she was somewhere else. A clearing, surrounded by trees that leaned inward, their trunks carved with names, hundreds of them, scratched deep and bleeding sap. She stumbled to a halt, her eyes scanning the bark. Her name was there, carved fresh, the edges still dripping. Her knees buckled and she fell, the ground cold and pulsing beneath her palms. The woman's laughter filled the air, not loud, but everywhere, seeping into the earth. The trees, the fog. You can't hide, she whispered, her voice curling inside Sophia's skull. You've always been here. The children appeared at the clearing's edge, their lullaby now a chant, their voices overlapping, accusing. Sophia, Sophia, you broke the chain. The words didn't make sense, but they felt true, like a truth she'd buried long ago. Have you ever felt a guilt so deep it seemed to predate you, as if you were born carrying someone else's sins? Hold up, can you feel that chill? The way Sophia's name carved into that tree feels like it's carved into your own skin. That's the woman in white's power, dragging out the guilt we all carry, the kind that makes you wonder if you can ever outrun your mistakes. Right now, I need you to pause with me in this fog and do something real. If this story's got you gripped, smash that like button to show it hit you hard. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button and join us. Trust me, you don't want to miss where this road leads. Now, tell me in the comments, What's a choice you made that still haunts you? A regret that feels like it's written in your own blood? I'm reading every single one, so let's share the weight of those shadows. The fog's closing in, so let's keep running before the woman catches us. The ground shuddered, and the trees began to move, not sway, but walk, their roots tearing. Free, dragging through the dirt with a sound like breaking bones. Sophia scrambled back, her hands scraping against stones that weren't there before, sharp enough to draw blood. The fog parted, and the woman stood at the center of the clearing, her children circling her, their eyes glowing now, matching hers. The red light wasn't just light, it was alive, pulsing in time with Sophia's heartbeat, syncing with her fear. The woman's smile widened, her teeth sharp, her face no longer human but something older, something that had seen centuries of betrayal and fed on it. "Look," she said, and the word wasn't a request but a command. Sophia's head turned against her will, her eyes locking on the ground. It wasn't dirt anymore, it was faces, dozens of them, pressed into the earth, their mouths moving, whispering her name. Can you fathom a place where the ground itself remembers every wrong, every lie, and speaks them back to you? She tried to scream, but her voice was gone, stolen by the air that grew thicker, heavier, like breathing water. The faces in the ground began to rise, not fully, just enough to show their eyes. Leandro's eyes, her mother's, her own. They weren't accusing now. They were pleading, begging her to join them. The woman stepped closer, her dress brushing the ground, leaving trails of ash. "You abandoned them," she said, her voice soft but laced with venom. "Just like me." The children's chant grew louder, their small hands pointing, their faces twisting into something crueler, hungrier. Sophia's mind fractured, memories flooding in, not just hers, but the woman's. A husband's betrayal, children crying in the dark, a mother's screams as the world turned its back. The pain wasn't just a vision, it was physical, burning through Sophia's veins, tearing at her soul. What would you do if someone else's agony became yours, so vivid you couldn't tell where their suffering ended and yours began? The clearing vanished, and she was back on the highway, the car looming ahead, its doors still open, the interior blacker than night. The fog was alive now. Not just swirling, but grabbing, its tendrils wrapping around her wrists, her ankles, pulling her toward the vehicle. She fought, clawing at the air, but the fog was stronger, colder, its touch like frostbite that burned. The woman's voice was inside her again, not whispering but shouting, a chorus of rage and sorrow. "You can't run from what you are." Bida. Children appeared in the car's windows, their faces pressed against the glass, their mouths open in silent screams, but they weren't screaming for help, they were screaming her secrets, every lie she'd told, every promise she'd broken. The fog tightened, dragging her closer, and the car's engine roared, not mechanical but alive, a growl that shook the ground. Can you imagine a machine that isn't just haunted but hungry, waiting for you to step inside? Sophia's feet betrayed her, stumbling forward, her body no longer fully hers. The woman was everywhere now, in the fog, in the car, in the reflections that flickered on the windshield, showing Sophia not as she was but as she could be, hollow-eyed, red-lipped, smiling that cruel smile. The children's chant became a scream, not angry but desperate, as if they were trapped too, bound to their mother's endless hunt. Sophia's hand brushed the car's door, and it burned, not hot but cold, so cold it felt like her skin was peeling away. The interior wasn't empty anymore. Shadows moved inside, not just the woman, not just the children, but others. Figures she knew, figures she'd forgotten, all staring, all waiting. The fog pushed harder, and she fell forward, her hands hitting the seat, the leather sticky with something that smelled of iron and decay. What would it feel like to touch something that wasn't just dead, but remembered dying, and wanted you to remember it too? The car door slammed shut behind her, the locks clicking with a finality that echoed in her bones. The engine roared again, and the car moved, not driven but pulled, the road bending beneath it, twisting into shapes no map could hold. The woman sat beside her now, not in the mirror but real, her red eyes inches away, her breath cold and sour, like earth after rain. The children were in the back seat, their hands on Sophia's shoulders, not gripping but resting, their touch heavier than stone. "You're home," the woman said, and the words weren't a comfort but a sentence. The window showed not the highway but faces, hundreds, thousands, all screaming, all hers. The car sped faster, the road dissolving, the fog a sea of red. Light that swallowed everything but the woman's smile. Sophia's mind screamed for escape, for answers, but the truth was slipping, replaced by a fear so deep it had no name. Can you feel a darkness that doesn't just surround you, but becomes you, rewriting your story with every heartbeat? The car plunged deeper, not into fog, but into something else, something thicker, older, alive with voices that weren't human, weren't animal, but something in between. The woman's laughter was a pulse now, syncing with the children's. Screams with Sophia's own heartbeat, until she couldn't tell which was which. The seats burned beneath her, not with heat, but with memories. Leandro's promises, her own betrayals, the woman's endless grief, all fusing into a single unbearable weight. The dashboard flickered, showing not numbers but words. Yule. Never leave. The road was gone, the car was gone, but the motion didn't stop, pulling her forward, downward, into a place where time didn't exist, only pain, only truth. The woman's hand brushed her face, gentle but final, her red eyes promising something worse than death, eternity. What happens when the nightmare doesn't end, when the monster doesn't kill you but keeps you, forever running, forever breaking, forever hers? The car's interior was no longer a refuge, but a tomb, the air thick with the stench of decay, and something sweeter, like wilted flowers left too long in a grave. Sophia's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, though the car moved. Without her touch, lurching through a fog that pulsed with a sickly red glow, alive and hungry, the woman in white sat beside her, not just a presence, but a force. Her red eyes boring into Sophia's skull, her skeletal fingers hovering inches from her face, trailing frost that burned like acid. The children's hands rested on Sophia's shoulders from the back seat, their touch not just heavy but invasive, sinking into her skin, rooting into her bones. Their lullaby had morphed into a discordant wail, each note a shard of glass in her mind, twisting her thoughts into shapes she couldn't recognize. Leandro's scream still lingered in the air, warped now, stretched into a sound that wasn't human, but something older, something that had screamed for centuries. Was he still out there, or had the fog claimed him, folding him into its endless hunger? Can you imagine a moment where you're not just lost, but erased, your very existence rewritten by a darkness that knows your name? The dashboard flickered, its lights no longer forming words but faces. Leandro's, her mother's, her own, all distorted, their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes pleading for release. The car's engine growled, not mechanical but alive, a deep guttural pulse that shook the seats, vibrating through Sophia's chest until her heartbeat synced with it, no longer hers. The windows didn't show the highway anymore, but a void, a churning sea of shadows where shapes moved, hands, limbs, faces, all pressing against the glass, smearing it with something dark and viscous. The woman's voice slithered into her. Mind, not a whisper but a roar, layered with the cries of her children, with the anguish of countless others. "You're not alone," she said, and the words weren't a comfort but a threat, a promise that whatever was out there was also inside her, clawing its way out. Have you ever felt a presence so close it's not just beside you but within you, peeling back your soul to see what bleeds? Sophia's scream tore free, raw and ragged, but the sound was swallowed, muffled by the fog that seeped through the car's vents, curling around her wrists like manacles. The seats beneath her pulsed, not leather but something softer, wetter, like flesh that remembered pain. She tried to move, to fling open the door, but her hands wouldn't obey, her fingers twitching as if controlled by strings. The woman's smile widened, her teeth sharp and jagged, her face no longer a woman's, but a mask of rage, of sorrow, of something that had never been human. The children's wail grew louder, their hands tightening, their nails digging into Sophia's shoulders, drawing blood that felt too cold, too heavy, as it trickled down her arms. The fog outside wasn't just fog anymore. It was alive, a mass of writhing forms, each one a fragment of a life, a betrayal, a loss. all screaming her name. What would it feel like to know the air you breathe is made of ghosts, each one carrying a piece of your guilt? The car lurched not forward but downward, as if the road had split open, plunging into a place where light didn't exist, only sensation, cold that burned, silence that roared, fear that had a pulse. The woman's eyes glowed brighter, their red light flooding the car, painting everything in shades of blood. Sophia's reflection in the windshield wasn't hers anymore. It was the woman's, then hers, then a hybrid of both, her own face melting into something hollow, her eyes glowing, her mouth stretched into that cruel, knowing smile. The children's hands moved, not just gripping but exploring, their fingers tracing her spine, her neck, each touch a violation that left her gasping. Their voices weren't singing now but speaking, a chorus of accusations. You left us, you lied, you broke us. The words weren't just sound, they were weight, pressing her down, crushing her will, until she wasn't sure if she was fighting or surrendering. Can you fathom a terror that doesn't just scare you but owns you, rewriting your thoughts until you're not sure what's yours anymore? The car's motion stopped, but the world didn't. The fog solidified, not into shapes but into walls, a labyrinth of mist and shadow that stretched in every direction, its corridors lined with mirrors. Each one showed Sophia not as she was, but as she feared she could be. A traitor, a coward, a monster. The reflections moved, not mimicking her but acting on their own, stepping out of the glass, their hands reaching, their voices whispering her secrets. You knew he was married. You didn't care. You wanted it. The words cut deeper than any knife, each one a truth she'd buried, now exhumed and alive. The woman walked among the mirrors, her children trailing, their small forms distorted, their faces flickering between innocence and malice. Look, the woman commanded, and Sophia's eyes obeyed, locking on a mirror that showed not her but Leandro, his face pale, his eyes empty, his body tangled in roots that pulsed like veins, dragging him into the ground. Was he dead or worse? Can you imagine seeing someone you love consumed, not by death, but by something that keeps them forever aware, forever suffering? The labyrinth shifted, the mirrors multiplying, their surfaces rippling like water. Sophia ran, her feet slipping, on a floor that wasn't stone but bone, slick and cold, crunching under her weight. The fog followed, not behind but around inside, filling her lungs with a taste like ash and blood. The woman's laughter was everywhere, not just sound but sensation, vibrating through the air, the ground, her skin. The children's voices joined, not chanting but screaming, not in fear but in hunger, their words a litany of her sins. You chose him, you broke them, you're ours. The mirrors began to bleed, not red but black, a thick, oily substance that pooled at her feet, rising, clinging to her legs, pulling her down. She fought, clawing at the air, but the black was alive, its touch not just cold but personal, whispering her name as it climbed. What would you do if the darkness wasn't just outside, but inside, not just chasing you but claiming you piece by piece? The ground gave way, and she fell, not into a void but into a memory, not hers but the woman's. She was the woman now, standing on a different road centuries ago, her children crying at her feet, their small hands clutching her dress as her husband's footsteps faded into the night. The pain wasn't just emotional, it was physical, a fire in her chest, a weight in her womb, a scream that tore her throat raw. The world turned its back, the stars dimmed, and the fog came not to comfort but to curse, binding her to the road, to the pain, to the children who would never grow. Sophia gasped, her mind splintering, the woman's grief flooding her, drowning her. She saw the children's faces not as ghosts but as they were, alive, laughing, then screaming as the world abandoned them. The woman's voice was in her head, not accusing but pleading. Feel it, know it, be it. Can you imagine a pain so vast it's not just felt but lived? Not just yours but eternal. A wound that never closes. She was back in the labyrinth, the mirrors. Gone, replaced by a forest of trees that weren't trees but bodies, twisted and fused, their limbs reaching, their faces half-formed, all whispering her name. The woman stood at the center, her children circling, their eyes no longer sad but ravenous, their mouths open, showing teeth that weren't human. The fog was thicker now, not just air but a presence, wrapping around Sophia's arms, her throat squeezing until her vision blurred. The woman's hand brushed her face, not gentle but possessive, her nails scraping, leaving trails of ice that burned. "You're not done," she said, and the words were a chain, locking Sophia to the moment, to the place, to the pain. The children lunged, not with hands, but with something else, tendrils, shadows, teeth, each touch a memory, a sin, a piece of her soul torn away. What happens when the monster doesn't just want your life, but your essence? Not just your fear, but your truth. The forest dissolved, and she was in the car again. But it wasn't a car anymore. It was a cage. Its walls flesh, its seats bone, its windows eyes, all watching, all knowing. The woman sat across from her, not beside, but inside, her red eyes glowing from within Sophia's own, her smile stretching Sophia's lips. The children were everywhere, not just behind but around, their hands not just touching but merging, their voices not just speaking but singing, a hymn of loss and rage that drowned out Sophia's thoughts. The car moved, not on a road, but through a sea of fog, of blood, of screams, each wave a memory, a betrayal, a life. The dashboard pulsed, not with lights, but with veins, each one beating her name, her guilt, her fear. The woman's voice was, her voice now whispering, "You're home," and the word wasn't a place but a state, a forever where escape was a lie. Can you feel a nightmare that doesn't just hold you but becomes you? A story that doesn't end but consumes, leaving nothing but the echo of your own scream. The sea parted, and the car was a house now, not hers, but the woman's, its walls rotting, its floors blood, its windows showing not the outside, but the inside, her children, her pain, her endless hunt. Sophia walked, not by choice, but by force. Her feet moving through rooms that shifted, each one a memory, a sin, a trap. The children followed, not walking but crawling, their forms no longer small but stretched, their faces no longer faces but masks, their eyes no longer eyes but voids. The woman was the house, her voice the creak of the floors, her touch the damp on the walls, her rage the air Sophia breathed. The rooms multiplied, each one darker, each one deeper, each one hers. She saw Leandro in one, not dead, but broken, his body woven into the walls, his eyes pleading, his mouth whispering her name. Was he real, or was he her, a piece of her guilt given form? Can you imagine a place where your fears aren't just seen but lived, where your sins aren't just remembered but built into the walls? The house became a road again, but not the highway, a path of bone, of ash, of blood, winding through a forest of screams, each tree a soul, each branch a plea, each leaf a lie. The woman walked beside her, not gliding but stalking, her children not trailing but hunting, their forms no longer distinct but a mass, a swarm of shadows and teeth. The fog was a storm now, not just air but force, slamming against Sophia, tearing at her clothes, her skin, her mind. The woman's voice was a howl, not one voice but thousands, each one a mother, a child, a betrayed, all screaming for justice, for pain, for her. Sophia's legs moved, not running but marching, her body no longer hers, her thoughts no longer hers, her fear no longer hers. The path twisted not forward but inward into her, into the woman, into the children, into the fog. What happens when you're not just chased but claimed, not just haunted but hollowed, not just lost but found by something that will never let you go? The path became a mirror, not glass but liquid, not reflecting but absorbing, pulling Sophia in, not her body but her soul. She was the woman now, her eyes red, her smile cruel, her children at her side, their hands hers, their pain hers, their hunt hers. She saw Sophia not as a memory but as prey, running, screaming, breaking, forever running, forever screaming, forever breaking. The fog was her breath, the road her will, the screams her song. She reached, not with hands but with rage, not with fingers but with truth, not with touch but with eternity. Sophia screamed, not her voice but the woman's, not her fear but the children's, not her soul but theirs. The mirror shattered, not into pieces but into eyes, all watching, all knowing, all hers. Can you feel a darkness that doesn't just end you but keeps you? A nightmare that doesn't just scare you but sings you? A story that doesn't just haunt you but is you, forever and ever and ever? Sophia's screams clawed at the air, but they were no match for the suffocating fog that coiled around her, a living shroud that pulsed with the woman in white's laughter. The car, or whatever it had become, was no longer just a vehicle. Its walls throbbed like a heartbeat, the seats oozing a slick, warm liquid that clung to her skin, whispering her name in 1,000 fractured voices. She gripped the steering wheel, her nails digging into the fleshy surface, desperate to anchor herself, to fight the pull of the woman's red eyes glowing in the darkness beside her. Those eyes weren't just watching, they were dissecting, peeling back layers of Sophia's soul with every glance. The children's hands, no longer small but elongated, spider-like, crawled up her arms, their nails scraping, their touch cold yet burning, rooting deeper into her flesh. Their wail, once a lullaby, was now a cacophony of rage, each note a blade slicing through her resolve. "I won't break!" Sophia hissed through gritted teeth, her voice trembling but defiant. But the woman's smile widened, sharp and cruel, her teeth glinting like shards of bone, her presence a weight that crushed Sophia's defiance into dust. Can you feel a moment where your strength is nothing? Where the thing you fight knows you better than you know yourself? The fog tightened, not just around her but inside, flooding her lungs with a taste of ash and sorrow. The woman's voice slithered into her mind, not a whisper but a command, layered with the screams of her children, with the echoes of countless betrayals. "You think you can resist? You're already mine." Sophia shook her head, her hands slamming against the wheel, willing the car to move, to escape, but it only sank deeper into the void, the windows showing not a road, but a churning abyss of faces. Her mother's, her ex-husband's, Leandro's, all twisted, all accusing. The children's fingers tightened, their nails piercing her skin, drawing blood that didn't drip but crawled, forming words on her arms. Traitor, liar. Ours, Sophia's. Heart pounded, her breath ragged, but she clung to a flicker of hope, a stubborn spark that refused to die. "I'm not you!" she spat, glaring at the woman, whose smile only grew, her eyes flaring brighter, promising pain beyond imagining. Have you ever fought a battle you knew you'd lose, yet couldn't stop because giving up meant losing yourself? The car shuddered, its fleshy walls contracting, squeezing Sophia until her ribs ached. The woman leaned closer, her breath cold and sour, like earth after a burial, her fingers brushing Sophia's cheek, leaving trails of frost that burned like fire. "Look," she said, and the word was a chain, forcing Sophia's eyes to the windshield. The fog parted, not to reveal the highway, but a memory. Sophia's memory, vivid and merciless. She was in her old apartment, the one she'd shared with her ex-husband, Daniel. His kind eyes, his quiet trust, his voice promising forever. But there was Leandro, his charm a poison she couldn't resist, his whispers pulling her into a web of lies. She saw herself laughing with him, kissing him, slipping away from Daniel's bed to meet Leandro in secret. Each betrayal, a brick in the wall she'd built between her and the man who loved her. The memory wasn't just a vision, it was a wound. Each moment a stab to her chest, each lie a weight dragging her down. The woman's laughter filled the air, not mocking but knowing, as if she'd scripted every choice Sophia had made. Can you imagine your past laid bare? Not as moments, but as crimes, each one a sentence you can't escape. The children's wail sharpened, their voices weaving Daniel's name into their song, accusing, pleading, condemning. Sophia's tears burned, but she couldn't look away. The The memory shifted, showing Daniel alone, his face pale, his hands trembling. As he found her messages to Leandro, each word a betrayal that broke him. She saw him confront her, his voice cracking, her own lies spilling out, excuses, deflections, anything to avoid the truth. And then the final blow, her leaving, walking, away from his shattered heart to chase Leandro's empty promises. The woman's hand clamped onto Sophia's shoulder, her nails digging in, her voice a hiss. You abandoned him, you broke him, just like me. The children's hands moved, not just gripping but tearing, their fingers pulling at Sophia's memories, her guilt, her soul, each touch a theft she couldn't stop. The car's walls pulsed faster, the air thick with the scent of blood and regret, and Sophia's defiance flickered, her strength crumbling under the weight of her own sins. What would it feel like to see your choices not as mistakes but as monsters, each one born from your hands, now turning to devour you? The dear windshield flickered and the memory dissolved, replaced by a new horror. The fog cleared, revealing a tree, gnarled and black, its branches twisting like veins. Hanging from one, a rope tight around his neck, was Leandro. His body swayed, his face pale, his eyes wide and empty, blood trickling from his mouth, staining, his chin pooling on the ground below. His wedding ring glinted faintly, a cruel reminder of the vows he'd broken, the lives he'd tangled in his lies. Sophia's scream tore free, raw and desperate, her hands clawing at the door, but it wouldn't open. The woman's smile was a blade, her eyes locked on Sophia's, her voice soft but venomous. He paid, now you will. The children's wail became a scream, not sorrowful but triumphant, their hands no longer just touching but merging, their forms dissolving into Sophia's skin, their pain becoming hers. Leandro's body twitched, not dead but alive, his mouth moving, whispering her name, his bloodied lips forming words. You did this. Can you fathom a moment where the one you loved is gone, yet still blames you, still haunts you, still pulls you into their grave? The car lurched, not forward but inward, its walls collapsing, not into rubble but into flesh, warm and pulsing, wrapping around Sophia like a cocoon. The woman was everywhere now, not just beside but inside, her red eyes glowing from Sophia's own, her smile stretching Sophia's lips, her rage burning in Sophia's chest. The children's screams were her screams, their hands her hands, their grief her grief. The fog was a storm, not just air but force, slamming against her, tearing at her clothes, her skin, her mind. The tree with Leandro's body vanished, but his face lingered in the air. Not one face but thousands, each one bloodied, each one accusing, each one hers. The woman's voice was a chorus now, not one but countless, each a mother, a child, a betrayed, all screaming for justice, for pain. For Sophia, you chose him. You broke them. You're ours. The words weren't just sound. They were chains binding her to the moment, to the pain, to the truth she couldn't escape. Have you ever felt a guilt so deep it's not just yours but eternal, a debt you'll pay forever? The car became a house, not Sophia's but the woman's, its walls rotting, its floors blood, its windows showing not the outside but the inside. Her children, her pain, her endless hunt. Sophia stumbled through rooms that shifted, each one a memory, a sin, a trap. In one she saw Daniel, not as he was but as she'd left him, his eyes hollow, his hands clutching a photo of their wedding, his voice a whisper, why? In another, Leandro hung again, not from a tree but from the ceiling, his blood dripping onto her face, his eyes locked on hers, his lips moving. You did this. The children followed, not walking but crawling, their forms stretched, their faces masks, their eyes voids. The woman was the house, her voice the creak of the floors, her touch the damp on the walls, her rage the air Sophia breathed. The rooms multiplied, each one darker, each one deeper, each one hers. Sophia's hands shook, her voice hoarse as she screamed, I'm sorry, but the words were empty, swallowed by the woman's laughter, by the children's screams, by the weight of her own betrayal. Can you imagine a place where your apologies are nothing, where your regret is just another brick in the prison you've built? The house dissolved, and she was on the road again. But it wasn't a road, it was a river, not water, but blood, thick and warm, pulling at her legs, her waist, her chest. The woman walked on its surface, her children swimming beneath, their hands grabbing, their teeth grazing, their voices a chant that drowned out Sophia's thoughts. Traitor, liar, ours. The fog was a hurricane. Not just wind, but memory, slamming her with visions. Daniel's tears, Leandro's lies, her own laughter as she chose betrayal over love. Sophia fought, her arms flailing, her legs kicking, but the river was alive, its current her guilt, its depth her shame. The woman's hand clamped onto her face, her nails piercing, her eyes promising not death, but eternity. "You'll never leave," she said, and the words were a sentence, a curse, a truth. Leandro's face appeared in the river, not one, but countless, each one bloodied, each one screaming, each one hers. The children's hands pulled harder, not just holding, but tearing, their teeth not just grazing, but biting, their pain not just felt, but lived. What happens when the thing chasing you doesn't want your life but your soul, not your fear but your truth, not your death but your forever? The river became a mirror, not glass but liquid, not reflecting but absorbing, pulling Sophia in, not her body but her essence. She was the woman now, her eyes red, her smile cruel, her children at her side, their hands hers, their pain hers, their hunt hers. She saw Sophia not as a memory, but as prey, running, screaming, breaking, forever running, forever screaming, forever breaking. The fog was her breath, the river her blood, the screams her song. She reached, not with hands, but with rage, not with fingers, but with truth, not with touch, but with eternity. Sophia screamed, not her voice, but the woman's, not her fear, but the children's, not her soul, but theirs. The mirror shattered, not into pieces, but into eyes, all watching, all knowing, all hers. The woman's laughter was a pulse, syncing with the children's screams, with Sophia's heartbeat, until she couldn't tell which was which. Can you feel a darkness that doesn't just end you but keeps you? A nightmare that doesn't just scare you but sings you? A story that doesn't just haunt you but is you, forever and ever and ever? The mirror's shards hung in the air, not falling but floating, each fragment a glowing eye that pulsed with the woman in white's cruel delight. Sophia's scream was no longer just hers. It carried the woman's rage, the children's grief, and the weight of her own shattered soul, echoing through the liquid void that had swallowed her. The river of blood churned beneath her, its surface rippling with faces. Daniel's, Leandro's, her own, all screaming, all hers, their mouths forming accusations that tore at her mind. Her hands clawed at the air, desperate to hold on to something, anything, to keep her from dissolving into the woman's will. "I'm not yours," she gasped, her voice raw, her body trembling as she fought the invisible chains binding her to the nightmare. But the woman's smile stretched wider, her red eyes flaring like twin suns, her laughter a blade that sliced through Sophia's defiance. The children's hands, now claw-like and relentless, burrowed deeper into her flesh, their nails scraping bone, their voices a shrieking chant, "Liar, betrayer, ours." Can you imagine fighting a force that doesn't just want your body, but your essence? A darkness that laughs at your resistance because it already owns your sins. The river surged, not water but memory, dragging Sophia under, not into liquid but into truth. The woman's voice boomed, not a whisper but a storm, layered with the cries of her children, with the anguish of every heart she'd claimed. "Look deeper," she commanded, and Sophia's eyes betrayed her, locking onto the river's surface. The fog parted, revealing not the road, not the house, but a scene from Leandro's life. One Sophia hadn't seen, hadn't known, but now felt as if it were her own wound. She saw Leandro in a dimly lit bar, his arm around another woman, not her, not his wife, but someone else. Her laughter bright, her eyes unaware of the lies he wove. His voice, smooth and practiced, whispered promises Sophia had once believed, promises of love, of escape, of a future. The woman in the bar melted into another, then another, a parade of faces, each one a betrayal, each one a mirror of Sophia's own foolishness. The woman's laughter filled the void, sharp and mocking, her skeletal fingers brushing Sophia's face, leaving trails of ice that burned. "He never chose you," she hissed. "You were just one of many. Have you ever felt a truth so sharp it cuts? Deeper than any knife, revealing not just your pain, but your blindness." Sophia's heart shattered, her breath catching as the images burned into her mind. Leandro's lips on another's, his hands tracing paths he'd traced with her, his lies a web that ensnared not just her, but countless others. "No," she joked, her voice breaking, her hands clawing at her own face as if she could tear the truth away. "He loved me." But the words were hollow, drowned by the woman's laughter, by the children's shrieks, by the river's relentless pulse. The woman leaned closer, her red eyes inches from Sophia's, her breath cold and rancid, like death itself. "You betrayed. For nothing," she whispered, and the words were a poison seeping into Sophia's veins, turning her despair into something alive, something that clawed at her from within. The children's hands tightened, their nails now teeth, biting into her arms, her shoulders, their voices a chorus of glee. "Fool, traitor, ours." Sophia's body shook, her mind fracturing as the weight of Leandro's betrayal crashed into her own guilt, her own sins, her own shattered trust. Can you fathom a moment where your heart breaks, not just for what you've done, but for what you believed? A betrayal that makes you question every choice you've ever made. The river boiled, its blood rising, wrapping around Sophia's waist, her chest, pulling her deeper into its truth. The woman's smile was a crescent of malice, her eyes flaring as she raised a hand, the fog twisting into a new vision. And there in the center of the void was Leandro again, not hanging but standing, his face pale, his eyes empty, blood still dripping from his mouth. But he wasn't alone. Shadows swirled around him, women, not ghosts, but memories, each one a lover he'd deceived, their faces twisted with rage, their hands reaching for him. His body jerked, not alive but animated, a puppet of the woman's will, his bloodied lips moving, whispering Sophia's name, then others, a litany of betrayal that echoed in the void. The woman's laughter grew louder, a symphony of cruelty, as she turned to Sophia, her fingers snapping, the vision shifting. Now Leandro hung again, the rope tight, his body swaying, but his eyes locked on Sophia's, not empty, but alive, burning with accusation. "You trusted me," his lips formed, blood bubbling with each word. "You destroyed us." The children screamed, their hands tearing at Sophia's skin, their teeth sinking deeper, their joy a fire that burned her soul. What would it feel like to see the one you loved, not just dead, but judged, not just gone, but a mirror of your own failures, blaming you for the ruin you both created? Sophia's scream was a wail, not just pain, but despair, her body collapsing into the river, her hands flailing, grasping for something to hold, something to believe in. But the river was merciless, its blood alive, its current her shame, pulling her under until she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't fight. The woman's laughter was everywhere, not just sound, but sensation, vibrating through the river, the fog, Sophia's bones. "You thought you were special," she taunted, her voice a blade that carved into Sophia's heart. "You were nothing." The children's forms shifted, no longer small but vast, their bodies a mass of shadows and teeth, their eyes glowing red like their mother's, their hands not just tearing but consuming, pulling at Sophia's memories, her hopes, her identity. The river surged, and Sophia saw herself now, not as she was, but as she'd been, laughing with Leandro, lying to Daniel, choosing betrayal over love, each moment a link in the chain that bound her to this hell. The woman's hand clamped onto her face, her nails piercing, her eyes promising not death but eternity. "Feel it," she hissed. "Know it. Be it." Can you imagine a despair so deep it's not just felt, but lived? A truth so heavy it becomes your only reality. The river became a void, not liquid but absence, not dark but alive, a place where time didn't exist, only pain, only truth. The woman stood at its center, her children a writhing mass around her, their forms no longer distinct but a storm, their screams not just sound but force, slamming against Sophia, tearing at her clothes, her skin, her soul. The fog was a hurricane, not just air but memory, slamming her with visions, Leandro's lies, Daniel's tears, her own laughter as she chose betrayal over love, each one a wound that didn't heal but grew, festering, consuming. Sophia's hands shook, her voice hoarse as she screamed, "I didn't know!" But the words were empty, swallowed by the woman's laughter, by the children's hunger, by the void's relentless pull. The woman's hand moved, not touching, but commanding, and the void shifted, becoming a house, not Sophia's, not the woman's, but Leandro's, its walls papered with lies, its floors slick with blood, its windows showing not the outside but the inside, his betrayals, his victims, his end. Can you fathom a place where your sins aren't just seen but built, where your mistakes aren't just remembered but lived, over and over forever? Sophia stumbled through the house, her feet slipping, her hands grasping at walls that pulsed like flesh, each touch a memory of Leandro's deception, each step a reminder of her own. In one room, she saw the women he'd loved, not ghosts, but echoes, their faces twisted with pain, their voices whispering her name, blaming her for believing, for falling, for breaking. In another, Leandro hung again, not from a rope, but from chains, his body broken, his blood dripping onto her face, his eyes locked on hers, his lips moving. You should have known. The children followed, not crawling, but flying, their forms a swarm, their teeth not just biting but devouring, their screams not just sound but truth, pulling at Sophia's soul until she felt herself unraveling piece by piece. The woman was the house, her voice the creak of the floors, her touch the blood on the walls, her rage the air Sophia breathed. The rooms multiplied, each one darker, each one deeper, each one hers. Sophia's defiance was a flicker now, her strength a memory, her hope a lie. Can you imagine a prison where the walls are your choices, where the air is your guilt, where the only escape is to become the thing you fear? The house dissolved, and she was in the void again. But it wasn't empty, it was alive, a mass of eyes, of hands, of teeth, all watching, all grabbing, all biting, all hers. The woman stood before her, not a figure but a force, her red eyes a universe, her smile a galaxy of pain, her children a storm that never ended. The fog was her breath, the void her heart, the screams her song. Sophia's body shook, her mind splintering, her soul tearing as the woman reached, not with hands but with truth, not with fingers but with eternity, not with touch but with ownership. "You're mine," she said, and the words were a sentence, a curse, a reality. The children's screams were a hymn, their hands a chain, their teeth a promise, pulling Sophia deeper, not into death but into something worse, something endless. Leandro's face appeared, not one but countless, each one bloodied, each one screaming, each one hers, blaming her, breaking her, binding her. The woman's laughter was a pulse, sinking with the children's hunger, with Sophia's despair, until she couldn't tell which was which. Can you feel a darkness that doesn't just end you but keeps you, a nightmare that doesn't just scare you but owns you, a story that doesn't just haunt you but is you, forever and ever and ever? The void pulsed, a living wound that held Sophia in its grip, her screams now indistinguishable from the woman in white's laughter, from the children's shrieks, from the endless wail of her own guilt. The fog was no longer just air but a tapestry of her sins, woven with threads of Leandro's lies, Daniel's heartbreak, and her own reckless choices. Each breath she took was laced with their pain, each heartbeat a reminder that she was no longer just Sophia. She was becoming something else, something bound to the woman, to the children, to the nightmare that refused to release her. The void's eyes watched, unblinking, their red glow sinking with the woman's, with the children's, with the faint flicker in Sophia's own reflection, now barely recognizable in the liquid mirror that churned around her. Her hands reached out, clawing at nothing, her voice a broken whisper, "Let me go." But the woman's smile was a crescent of malice, her skeletal fingers curling through the fog, her voice a venomous promise. "You're already gone. Can you imagine a moment where you're not just trapped but transformed, where the thing that holds you doesn't just want your fear, but your very being? The mirror shattered again, not into fragments, but into a scream, a single, piercing note that wasn't just sound, but force, slamming Sophia backward, her body tumbling through the void, through the fog, through time itself. She landed hard, not on the road, not in the car, but somewhere else, a crumpled heap of metal and glass, the air thick with the stench of gasoline and blood. The world was tilted, upside down, the car's roof crushed against the pavement, its windows shattered, the fog seeping in like a predator sniffing out its prey. Sophia's body ached, her limbs heavy, her head throbbing as shards of glass bit into her skin. She was free, or was she? The highway stretched around her, no longer endless but real, its asphalt scarred with skid marks, its silence broken by the distant wail of sirens. The woman was gone, the children silent, the red glow faded, but their absence felt like a lie, a trick deeper than any before. Have you ever woken from a nightmare only to feel it still clinging to you, its claws? Hidden but sharp, waiting for the moment you let your guard down. Sophia tried to move, her hands slipping in something warm and sticky, her own blood pooling beneath her, mingling with the glass and twisted metal. Her breath came in shallow gasps, each one a struggle against the weight in her chest. Not just pain, but something heavier, something that wasn't hers. She turned her head, her vision blurring, and saw the driver's seat empty. Leandro was gone, not a trace of him. Not a body, not a sound, only the echo of his bloodied face in her mind, his lips whispering, "You did this." The fog lingered. Outside, thinner now, but it pulsed faintly as if watching, waiting. Her fingers fumbled, reaching for the door, but her strength was slipping, her body betraying her as the sirens grew louder, their red and blue lights cutting through the mist. Like the woman's eyes. "I'm alive," she whispered, but the words felt hollow, her voice not quite her own, as if someone else spoke through her lips. Can you fathom a freedom that feels like a cage, a survival that carries the weight of something you can't name? The authorities found her minutes later, their flashlights slicing through the fog, their voices sharp with urgency as they pried open the wreckage. "She's alive!" one shouted, his hands pulling her from the mangled car, her body limp, her eyes open but unseeing. They laid her on a stretcher, their faces a blur of concern and confusion, their questions unanswered as Sophia stared past them. Her gaze locked on something they couldn't see, a flicker of white in the fog, a shadow that wasn't there, a pair of red eyes that vanished when she blinked. The paramedics worked quickly, their hands checking her pulse, her wounds, their voices noting the impossible. No broken bones, no fatal injuries, just cuts and bruises. Yet her silence was deafening, her stillness unnatural. "She's in shock," one said, but the word didn't capture the truth, didn't touch the void that had settled in her chest, the weight that pinned her to a reality she couldn't escape. Have you ever seen someone who's breathing but gone, their eyes open but trapped in a place no one else can reach? They rushed her to the hospital, the ambulance's siren a faint echo of the children's wail. The sterile lights above her a mockery of the red glow that still burned in her mind. Doctors swarmed, their machines humming, their tests relentless. Scans, monitors, probes, all searching for answers her body wouldn't give. Her brain activity was normal, they said, her vitals stable, her injuries minor, yet she didn't speak, didn't move, didn't blink unless they forced her eyes to close. She lay in the hospital bed, her hands limp, her face a mask of stillness, her eyes staring at a ceiling that wasn't there. The doctors whispered of catatonia, of trauma too deep to name, their charts filled with terms that meant nothing to the thing inside her, the thing that wasn't Sophia anymore. Nurses came and went, their voices soft, their touches gentle, but none could reach her. None could see the fog that lingered in her pupils, the red glow that flickered when the lights dimmed. Can you imagine a body that's whole, but a mind that's a prison? A soul that's not lost, but stolen, held by something that never lets go? Weeks passed, the hospital a blur of white walls and beeping machines, but Sophia's condition didn't. Jane, the doctors tried everything, medications, therapy, even experimental treatments, but her eyes remained fixed, her body a statue, her mind a battlefield no one could enter. They moved her to a psychiatric facility, its halls quiet but heavy, its rooms filled with others who were lost in their own voids. She sat in a chair by a window, her hands folded, her gaze empty, the staff noting her compliance, her silence, her eerie calm. But inside, Sophia was screaming, her mind a loop of horror that never stopped. She saw Leandro, not once but endlessly, his body hanging, his blood dripping, his eyes accusing, his lips forming her name. The woman in white stood behind him, her red eyes unblinking, her smile a promise of eternity, her children circling, their hands reaching, their teeth biting, their voices singing her sins. Traitor, liar, ours. Each vision was a chain, each moment a wound, each scream a reminder that she was no longer free. Have you ever felt a terror that doesn't fade, a nightmare that doesn't end when you wake, a truth that traps you in your own skin? The hospital's records noted her as a mystery, a case without answers, her file growing thicker with theories, but no solutions. The staff whispered about her, their voices low, their eyes avoiding hers, sensing something they couldn't name. "She's not right," one nurse said, crossing herself when she thought no one was watching. "It's like something's holding her." They didn't know how true that was, didn't see the fog that clung to her shadow, didn't hear the lullaby that hummed in her silence, didn't feel the red eyes that watched from the corners of her mind. Sophia's body sat, ate, slept, but her soul was elsewhere, running down an endless road, clawing at a car that wasn't there, begging for a freedom that didn't exist. The woman's laughter was her heartbeat now, the children's hands her thoughts, their pain her reality. She saw Leandro die again and again, his blood a river, his face a mirror, his death a truth she couldn't unsee. Can you fathom a life that's not yours? A mind that's a maze, a soul that's a slave to a horror that never forgets? In her mind, the loop tightened, the visions sharper, the woman closer, her red eyes a universe of rage, her children a storm of hunger, their hands no longer just tearing but building, crafting a prison from Sophia's guilt, her shame, her love, her lies. She tried to fight, her thoughts screaming, I'm sorry, but the words were dust, scattered by the woman's laughter, by the children's teeth, by the weight of Leandro's bloodied gaze. The hospital's walls faded, the nurses' voices a distant hum, the world a shadow she couldn't touch. She was the woman now, or the woman was her. Their pain won, their rage won, their hunt won. The children sang, not a lullaby but a hymn, their voices weaving her name into eternity. Sophia, Sophia, forever ours. She saw Leandro's death, not as a moment but as a forever. His eyes never closing, his blood never drying, his blame never fading. She was paralyzed, not just in body but in soul, a prisoner in a mind that wasn't hers, a slave to a nightmare that didn't end. Can you imagine an eternity where you're not just haunted but hollowed, not just trapped but taken, not just alive but owned, forever watching, forever breaking, forever hers? The fog never left, not really. It lingered in the corners of the psychiatric ward, in the flicker of the lights, in the silence of the night when the other patients slept. But Sophia's eyes stayed open, unblinking, unseeing, yet seeing too much. The woman in white was there, not in body, but in breath. Her red eyes a glow that no one else could see, her laughter a pulse that no machine could measure. The children's hands were her chains, their voices her walls, their pain her sky. Sophia's body lived, her heart beat, her lungs breathed, but she was gone, lost to a road that never ended, a car that never stopped, a truth that never forgave. She was a shell, a vessel, a warning, a story whispered in the dark, a name carved. In the fog, a soul claimed by the woman in white, forever running, forever screaming, forever hers. And somewhere, in the deepest part of her mind, she knew there was no escape, no redemption, only the endless loop of Leandro's death, the woman's smile, and the children's song, binding her to a darkness that would never let go. Can you feel it? The pull of a story that doesn't end, a nightmare that doesn't wake, a truth that doesn't free but enslaves, forever and ever and ever? The woman in white doesn't just haunt Sophia, she haunts us. Her children's song digging into our secrets. That dread, that pull, it's still there, isn't it? If you're hungry for another story that grips your soul, The Mirrors. Keeper is next. It's about a reflection that knows your sins and won't let you look away. Click now, see if you can face what it shows you.